I didn't order a pizza. I drove to the cemetery, sat on the hood of my dented sedan, ate a granola bar while the sun went down. I told myself being the strong one was a compliment. It took me years to understand it's often just code for, how much weight can we stack on her back before she breaks? There was only one person who ever noticed the cracks. My grandfather, Maximilian Lancaster, a hard-nosed Irish immigrant who built a real estate empire from nothing but grit and vision. He loved my mother, but he looked at her and my father with tired disappointment. He paid for my braces when my parents needed the money for Louise's vocal coach. He taught me how to read a balance sheet when I was 12. We'd sit on the porch at dusk. "Claire," he'd say, voice rough as gravel, "money doesn't grow on trees. It grows from work, from maintenance, from people who understand engines." Then he'd look me straight in the eye. "You keep engines running. Never hand the steering wheel to someone just because they talk pretty." I didn't understand then how literal that advice would become. When my grandfather died during my sophomore year of college, the reading of his will was the first time I saw the teeth behind my family's smiles. We gathered in a lawyer's mahogany-paneled office that smelled like old paper and quiet power. My father, Conrad, was already talking about buying a boat. Louise, my sister, was scrolling through luxury cars on her phone. Then the lawyer read the clause that fractured the room. "To my granddaughter Claire Davenport, whom I trust to preserve the legacy, I leave 51% of the voting stock in Lancaster Holdings, along with the chairmanship of the board. The remaining 49% shall be divided equally among my daughter Rachel, my son-in-law Conrad, and my granddaughter Louise, distributed as quarterly dividends." Silence. "Then 51%, my mother shrieked. "She's 20 years old, she's a child. Conrad, do something. She poisoned him against us, she must have lied." My mother shouted. Louise burst into tears, pageant-perfect sobs. "But Grandpa promised I'd be the face of the company. I'm the one people want to look at." And then they turned on me, not with violence, with pressure, dense, suffocating, like gravity had doubled. Selfish, ungrateful, cold. Why did I need control? I was young. I was grieving the only person who had ever loved me without conditions, and I wanted the shouting to stop. I wanted them to love me, so I made a deal with the devil. "Fine," I said, my voice shaking. "I'll keep the voting rights, that's what Grandpa wanted, but I'll sign a directive maximizing dividends. You'll get the money. I'll handle operations." I thought it was a compromise. It was a surrender. That decision defined the next decade of my life. I finished college working 2 jobs despite controlling a company because I felt guilty spending family money. I sent checks home to help Conrad pay off a mortgage on a house far too large for their needs. Meanwhile, Louise dropped out of community college after 1 semester and moved to Los Angeles to build her brand. Every condo lease, every leased Range Rover, every rhinoplasty, every breast augmentation, funded by dividends I approved, I became the fixer. When Louise got a DUI in Malibu, I paid the attorney. When Conrad invested in an ostrich farm scheme, I absorbed the loss. When Rachel decided the kitchen needed its 3rd renovation, I signed the check. I told myself this was love, that by solving their problems, I was earning my seat at the table. But there was a crack. I was 25 when I applied for a small loan to buy my first reliable car. The bank manager with kind eyes, reading glasses on a chain, and frowned at her screen. "Miss Davenport, I can't approve this." "Why not? My credit should be perfect." "It's 520, she said gently. "You have $40,000 in delinquent credit card debt and collections." I laughed. "I don't have a credit card." She turned the monitor toward me. "Platinum Visa, opened 3 years earlier, maxed out on luxury hotels, cosmetic procedures, high-end boutiques, opened with my social security number." I drove straight to my parents' house. I expected shock, outrage. Instead, my mother waved dismissively while chopping vegetables. "Oh, it was just confusion. I needed to cover your grandmother's hospital bills. I must have mixed up the information. I meant to pay it off. Things got tight. Don't make it dramatic. You can fix it, right? You always fix things." And I believed her, because believing my own mother had stolen my identity was too painful to face. I paid the debt. Spent 3 years rebuilding my credit. Never mentioned it again, until tonight. Sitting in Jeremy's office, rain slashing against the windows, the memory resurfaced like something drowned clawing back to air. The Slack channel, the draft horse, the trust amendment, the enterprise. The credit card hadn't been a mistake, it was a rehearsal, a prototype. They hadn't raised me to succeed. They had raised me to sustain. Responsible so I could be harvested. Resilient so I could absorb impact. Loyal so I would never report them. I wasn't family. I was infrastructure, a host organism. And now they wanted full acquisition. I thought of the letter my grandfather left me, the one locked in a safe deposit box all these years. He'd warned me. People who want fruit without planting the tree will eventually cut the tree down for firewood. My hands were steady now. The shaking was gone. They wanted their own kingdom? Fine. I would show them what a kingdom looks like without a treasurer, without a general, without the worker who keeps the engines running. Let the draft horse unhook herself. If you ask me when I truly lost myself, it wasn't tonight. It wasn't the hurricane. It wasn't even the Slack messages. It was 4 years ago. Austin, Texas. The annual Southwest Financial Tech Summit. The air conditioning was Arctic. The room smelled like stale coffee and ambition. I sat in the third row representing omni-precision, pretending to care while men in fleece vests explained blockchain like it was a religion. Then Jeremy Hartwell walked on stage. No fleece vest. Navy bespoke suit tailored like armor. No podium. He prowled the edge of the stage, microphone in hand, relaxed and dangerous. Forbes had just named him one of the 30 under 30 inches to watch. He spoke about disrupting legacy banking, democratizing capital, empowering millennials, buzzwords, but he delivered them like prophecy. When the Q&A began, I raised my hand. "Mr. Hartwell," I said, steady despite hundreds of eyes turning toward me. "Your risk models appear to rely on algorithmic structures similar to those that amplified the 2008 collapse. How does Apex Global protect retail investors if the market corrects more than 10%? The room went silent. It was a technical question, an uncomfortable question, the kind that exposes weak foundations. Jeremy didn't flinch. He stopped pacing, shielded his eyes from the lights, and smiled, slow, genuine, directly at me. "That," he said into the microphone, "is the smartest question I've heard all day. What's your name?" "Claire." "Well, Claire," he replied, still holding my gaze, "remind me not to play poker with you. Here's your answer." He dismantled the question elegantly. After the panel, while I was packing my laptop, I felt him beside me. Up close, he was overwhelming. Sandalwood, expensive wool, precision. "You're dangerous, Claire," he said, handing me a business card thick as cardstock. "Let me buy you a coffee. I need to know where you learned to read a balance sheet like that." We walked to a cafe around the corner. Within 20 minutes, he had added me on LinkedIn, followed me on Instagram, and asked for my personal number. Focused, intense, magnetic. But what hooked me wasn't the charm, it was this. He scrolled his phone, pretending to check something, paused, looked up with wide, almost innocent eyes. Wait as in Maximilian Lancaster, the real estate legend? And that's when I should have understood. "My grandfather," I said carefully, bracing for the usual reaction, curiosity about money, hints about investments. Jeremy lowered his phone, and something changed in his face. Not greed, not calculation, reverence. "I wrote my college thesis on your grandfather's acquisition strategy in the 1980s, he said softly. The man was brilliant. He saw value in dust. Most people saw empty land. He saw leverage. He studied me. You have his eyes, that same precision. No wonder you challenged me in there. For the first time in my life, someone wasn't looking at me like a vault. He was looking at me like a legacy, like an equal. That was how the love bombing began. Not a trickle, a flood. He didn't date me. He campaigned. Every Monday morning, a bouquet of white peonies, my favorite, something I had mentioned exactly once, arrived at Omni Precision's front desk. $300 a bouquet. My colleagues would gather around my desk. "You're so lucky." On weekends, we flew to New York, San Francisco, Chicago. "Private," he'd say casually. Later, I would learn they were discounted empty-leg charters. But at 30,000 feet, sipping champagne, I felt chosen. He didn't speak about us like a romance. He spoke about us like a merger. "I don't want a wife, Claire," he told me over candlelight at a Michelin-starred restaurant, his gaze locked onto mine. "I want a partner, a co-CEO of my life, someone who understands weight, pressure, vision." He squeezed my hand. "We're not just a couple, we're a power structure. We're going to build an empire." After years of being utilized, here was a stallion offering to run beside me. 6 months in, the financial grooming began. So subtle I mistook it for love. He stood in my apartment one evening, looking at the stack of financial mail on my counter, brokerage statements, dividend notices, tax documents. "This is chaos. You're wasting hours managing admin work. Your time is worth more than this. I just don't trust anyone else, I admitted. Trust me, he said gently. Apex Global has a family office division. We manage high-net-worth portfolios every day. Let me consolidate everything. We'll optimize tax exposure, reinvest dividends automatically. You'll gain 10 hours a week. It sounded rational, efficient, professional. I signed a limited power of attorney, transfer authorizations, digital permissions. It's procedural, he said, tapping the little yellow sign here flags. So I don't need to bug you for passwords every time I move funds. I remember hesitating, just for a second, my grandfather's voice echoing in my memory, never hand over the steering wheel. Then Jeremy kissed my temple. We're a team, and I signed. There was only one person who saw it coming, Ivy Hart, my best friend since third grade, an ER nurse. Trauma was her daily diet. Her radar for danger was calibrated like military equipment. I introduced her to Jeremy at a cocktail party 8 months into the relationship. Jeremy turned on the performance, Rolex flashing, stories about charitable foundations, strategic philanthropy. Ivy sipped her cheap beer and watched. Later, while Jeremy was in the bathroom, she pulled me onto the balcony. I don't like him, she said bluntly. I laughed. What? He's successful, he's brilliant, he treats me like gold. He doesn't look at you like a person, she replied quietly. He looks at you like an acquisition target. He's not dating you, he's doing due diligence. I felt heat rise in my chest. You're jealous, I snapped. A terrible thing to say. You see disasters all day. You don't recognize something good. She held up her hands. Okay, but when he strips the assets, don't say I didn't warn you.